Alreet Petals, how you deein? It's your girl Lai-Dee Flegman and welcome back to my channel where I reveal my degeneracy to the whole world one video at a time. And today we're talking about this little gem here, a TV series from the early 2000s that aired on British television and awakened my inner degen. Now you're probably wondering where on earth I came up with this idea, and I'll let you in with a little backstory. Flashback. I was up in the bedroom, rearranging some furniture, and I came across something that made me think of the raunchy little TV series. This book was made to accompany the TV series and came out in 2002, I believe it was, and when I was a wee 16-year-old.
Hold up!
Okay, listen. Us British girls are built different compared to others, okay? Anyway, that's not the point. And it got me thinking, is there any way to actually watch this series and the follow-up series that they made? Short answer, no. Long answer, no. I have literally scoured everywhere for this series, and all I could find was one episode of the follow-up series on YouTube. And yeah, it's not something I can use for clips, unfortunately, but what I could do is review the book instead. So go grab a cuppa, get some snacks, and make yourself comfy, cause here we go. Also, this video, like all my other videos, will be censored, so if you'd prefer to watch the uncensored version along with other exclusive content, then head over to the Patreon, link for which is in the description. Thanking you all muchly. So the show Tips for Girls first aired on Channel 4 in July 2001 and had around 6 to 10 episodes if I remember rightly, and each episode centred around a couple of couples, each wanting to spice up their lives. Now the episode that sticks with me the most was the BDSM episode. No idea why. And it followed a couple in their 20s, I believe, and their journey exploring all the different kinky that BDSM has to offer. From them trying out restraints and whips, all the way to dress up in BDSM clubs and dungeons. It's honestly what started my own degen journey of debauchery. And like I said earlier, I couldn't find anything of this series to prove this fever dream even existed, other than a splash card and the IMDb page, and of course the book, so I thought, why not do a review on the book instead? So we'll start with a blurb. If bedtime means cuddling up with a nice book rather than setting the sheets on fire, then it's time you swapped your bedside read for Tips for Girls and discovered how to put that nighttime mug of cocoa to good use. Presenting a no-nonsense sassy approach to sex in the 21st century, Tips for Girls goes right back to the bedroom basics, tackling everything from oral sex to different positions to toys and fantasies. Containing over 100 hints and tips, this book is guaranteed to put the X back in your sex life. Find out how to achieve a full body orgasm, how to lure your man home, how to find your A and U spots, and much more. Allow this book to unleash your inner love goddess. Accompanying the Channel 4 series that's teaching Britain how to do it better, this handbag-sized guide is specially created for the girl who wants to get the best out of saucy. As I said earlier, this book was to accompany the two shows that first aired between 2001 and 2002 and was written by Flic Everett. Flic Everett is a journalist and sex author with quite a number of guidance books under her belt, some of which I also own, and she was an agony aunt for the magazine company. It begins with the introduction, which talks about the general things you'd expect in an introduction, and this beautiful line, "Yet there's so much written, spoken, and discussed when it comes to sex. You'd think that we'd all be sexperts, tweaking nipples in our sleep, bringing partners to dizzy with one hand, whilst polishing our toolkit of with the other. I want a toolkit of It would be like the back belt for degens." The book contains 8 chapters: foreplay, positions, spicing it up, sex toys, adventurous, advanced, and spiritual sex. Now, for obvious reasons, I can't go into the nitty-gritty details of the book, but what I'll do is give a basic rundown of what each chapter is, and maybe 1 or 2 of the tips. So the first chapter is all about foreplay, because that's not nitty-gritty, of course not. Yes, straight into it, no punches pulled here. It covers everything you could think of when it comes to foreplay, including dirty talk, messages, and of course kissing. I love the first line of the chapter. If there's anyone who doesn't know by now that foreplay is necessary for good sex, they've almost certainly been living in some Jurassic swamp, practicing their moves on the last remaining Diplodocus. I don't know why, it just makes me chuckle every time I read it. There's also a tip on almost every page that's loosely based around what each chapter is. For example, here's the first tip. Tip number 1. An easy way to get into talking dirty, if you find it a little difficult at first, is to use words normally associated with food. Boil me now, put me on slow roast and turn me halfway through. No, I'm joking. Words like eat, lick, suck, taste and nibble are useful, and using the blunt Anglo-Saxon words for axe is better than the medical terms. Vagina sounds like your doctor's about to perform an examination, whereas is suitably earthy and basic. But don't get too hung up on the Anglo-Saxon stuff. You don't want to be wondering what the Middle English for clitoris is at the crucial moment. I won't go over all the tips in the book, that would take up far too much time, and ain't nobody got time for that, but I'll go through a few of them sparingly throughout the video. So first up, talking dirty. This section is all about talking dirty, surprise surprise, and how to do it. From phone sex to sending emails and DMs, or text messages as it says in the book. Two of my favourite lines from this section have to be, "You want to come on my tits?" and "So sit on my tool, but..." Oof, so hot. Though I will suggest not to go around saying that on the first date. Best case scenario, you'll find yourself getting a slap. Worst case scenario, you've got YouTubers making videos about you being the creepiest person on the planet. Next up in this chapter is kissing, and how kissing can be used for foreplay and not just for snogging's sake. There's also a lot of talk about licking and how not to lick your partner too much, as they may start feeling like they're a kitten getting a wash. Never lick like a mummy cat trying to dislodge a flea. Now that's just words to live by. Tip 6 is a very good tip. Tip 6. He doesn't necessarily understand that kissing doesn't have to lead to sex. To a man's brain, if you're getting hot and heavy and snogging, you're basically saying, "I want to have sex with you right now." To yours, you may just be saying, "I really like you and I really feel like snogging." So make it clear. Just murmur, "I love snogging," with no other expectations sometimes. It's so sexy. That should do it. Though I have a feeling this author isn't a fan of feet, nor the licking of feet by this line here. If you're inclined, you can kiss and lick his feet, but I can think of about 50 things to do that would be more fun. Starting with making a papier-mâché model of Hong Kong, and ending with rearrange a series of wood lice in order of size. She also describes men's feet as scaly yellow monstrosities, so yeah, I get the feeling she doesn't like feet. The next couple of sections in this chapter cover massage and touching the bits, as the book so innocently calls it, which is also an important part of foreplay, or just in general too. As the book says, it's not just for sports stars and dodgy men at Cleopatra's body temple, all new staff. It also goes on to say a good massage should take around an hour, and I can concur with that. A few brisk jiggles does not count. That goes for us women too. Your partner deserves that massage just as much as you do. I love giving massages, to my partner's delight, because of the intimacy we both get from it. I'm a huge supporter of getting non-sexual intimacy as much as sexual intimacy, and massage is one of the best ways of doing it. Here's a tip for everyone from me, gender not applicable. If you offer your boo a foot rub, 9 times out of 10 you'll get one back. I say foot rub. A foot massage can be arousing too, but for many, feet are the work of the devil and are best avoided, however attractive the legs attached to them may be. As you can see, the foot hate continues. Also, you shouldn't jiggle the breasts. As the book says, they are not beanbags handed out to kindergarten children. Interesting way to put that. Nor should they be twiddled, flicked, pulled or pressed. Says you, book. Jokes aside, yeah, don't flick the nips, unless they're into that. This next bit, we're talking touching the bits. Apparently this part is where it gets complicated, so grab your thinking caps everyone. Because just like the breasts, treating each other's nether regions like baby toys by just pulling, prodding and violently jiggling is profoundly a bad idea. Book's words, not mine. Apparently the myth of men not being able to find the magic happy ending bean is still a thing, and this book goes into a lot of detail on it in this section. As we must remember, the bean is a sensitive part of the woman and must be treated as so. You're not buffing your army boots, rather a precious jewel. Do not fear though, men, the next section is all about the hand job. Now it may not be as mysterious as the elusive screamer bean, but a good hand job is still a skill people should acquire. As the book says, it's all about the grip you use. Even if the house is surrounded with police vans and officers shouting through megaphones, he'll still have an orgasm before he comes out with his hands up. I want to know why the police were at the door to begin with. What did you do? How loud was he screaming? Did you squeeze so hard that it fell off? I need answers, damn it. Next chapter, and it's all about the positions. What's your favourite position? I love the acorn, where you just curl yourself up and cocoon yourself with all the blankets. Though I think that may be a different kind of position than what the book's talking about. This chapter is actually really informative and gives a really good selection of positions for you and your boo to try, like the scissors, spooning, and her on top. It also advises that you don't need a huge amount of positions to make it good. Knowing a few good ones is better than knowing all the weird ones, which I kind of agree with. It also goes into advanced positions like inversion and the wheelbarrow, as well as places to do it too, like on a chair, in the car, in the shower. I also like this tip within this section about bodily noises and such. Tip 20. You should never be embarrassed by the noises your body makes during sex, because men find them highly erotic. And squishy noises are a part of the whole experience. You can get a similar effect from lubrication on your hands, so if you're using it, it doesn't hurt to try and rub them together first. Other noises, such as the charmingly named fanny fart, are simply a result of having air forced into your vagina by his thrusting, and therefore nothing to be embarrassed about. In fact, it's his fault if it's anyone's. Though passing the blame onto him is a little harsh. It's just what happens when you're in the throes of passion. It's how you end up saying you shit on someone's chest. It's all in the heat of the moment. It also talks about games you can play, anything from key parties to strip chess. You know what, I learnt a lot from this book. You believe me? Was I maybe a little naive to be learning about key parties? Possibly, but hey ho, I turned out okay, I think. And yes, I'm aware of the preschooler book about parents that are swingers. It's damn ridiculous. There are things preschoolers don't need to know about, and if I believe it's too far and heading into risky territory, then something is certainly off. I'm all for sex positivity and teaching kids early about their bodies and the weird things it goes through as they grow up, but they don't need to know about what key parties are, or what a butt plug is for that matter. And yes, I'm probably just going to be making videos on this, so subscribe. Anyway, next chapter. Oh dear lord, how am I going to talk about this chapter without getting age restricted? Oh please, we got age restricted hours ago. The explosion of sparkles and gasping. The happy ending, otherwise known as a fireworks scene in cliché TV shows. Or orgasms for the adults in the room. Again, this section goes over a decent amount of detail on how to get the best happy ending and to also give the best sparkle time. Because it's not just about us girlies. I know the running gag is that men can have a simple tug and have a happy ending, while girls have to do voodoo rituals to have their sparkle time. But men can have just as much troubles as us ladies too. Even if the book says, the female orgasm is a gentle flower that needs to be unfurled slowly and kindly. Though the follow-up line to that makes me chuckle. And of course, there are times when you just want a violent quickie and you may come dramatically from the sheer thrill of it all. Also, did you know that 70% of the female happy ending is from strumming the bean? While the vajayjay has many nerve endings and numerous spots, it's still mostly down to the stimulation. The more you know. Tip 27. The nipple orgasm may or may not be a myth, but just in case it isn't, the way to get one is, apparently, for him to suck gently on your tongue and lips, then assert the same pressure on your nipples, for the same amount of time. He may need to do this several times, but whether or not you actually have an orgasm, it's certainly going to feel pretty good. As a compromise, unless you have stunningly sensitive nipples that orgasm at a flick of a switch, he can also touch your Interesting. It is possible, but like the book says, you've got to have very sensitive nips. Moving on. It also goes over the ultimate question when it comes to an oral happy ending. To spitteth or swalloweth. I do like the analogy of imagining baby spermies swimming down your gullet, excitedly looking for something to fertilise. You'll be wondering whether you really should hate the taste quite that much, and imagining all the baby sperms swimming excitedly down your gullet. It just made me chuckle. I won't say what I usually say about it, because I can see it being taken seriously by the feminines, so I shall refrain from saying it isn't ladylike to spit. But don't worry, because DT is actually a myth too. Well, according to the book that is. That is because the average length of a gentleman's sausage is actually around 5.5 inches. Strange, because I'm sure I've had something longer shoved down my throat before now.
That's what she said!
I will say tip 30 and 31 are rather interesting. Tip 30. If you have long hair, it's very sensual for him if you wrap strands of it around his and stroke it up and down the head. You can even give him a hand job with your own hair wrapped around him for friction. The smell and texture of your hair can be a real turn on for him. Some men even have a hair fetish. So don't ignore it as a sexual tool. If you haven't got long hair, you can achieve the same effect with a silk scarf. And it's not as difficult to wash when he comes all over it either. Tip 31. For a very dirty and porn-friendly version of sex, ideal for, say, when you've got your period, you can give him a job. There may be a man out there who doesn't like this, but he's probably listening to a Judy Garland album right now. So he puts his between your breasts and you squeeze them together with your upper arms, or if you have small breasts, with your hands, and he thrusts away. You can use baby oil or KY jelly to make it smoother, and of course you may be able to bend your neck forward so that you can lick the tip as he thrusts upwards. There's every chance he'll want to come on your face, or you can be a really kind porn star and take him in your mouth. The choice is all yours. And this is how kinks are formed. But not on a serious note, the kink talked about in tip 30 is called trichophilia, and I talk about that in my cultured video, link for which should be up in the corner there. Let's quickly move on to the next chapter, shall we, before I get shadow banned for life by the higher ups. On to chapter 4, called Spicing It Up. Now this chapter talks about ways you can spice up your squish if you've been in a long-term relationship, because in the first couple of months to around a year, you're both full of pee. The love hormone, I mean, and will have squish at any moment you can, like it's going out of fashion. Or, like the book says, you haven't yet noticed his habit of turning his pants inside out to wear them for 2 days. Or he hasn't chanced upon your Phil Collins collection. I love the outdated references that are sprinkled throughout this book, they are so funny. Whereas when you get past that stage and start hating each other and wishing they would stop snoring or noticing that annoying way that they cough. So to stop that happening and to keep you from the surgeon's knife or that hot barista that smiles at you, we keep things fresh. Like the book says, as long as you still fundamentally like each other and aren't creased with loathing the way the other eats soup or rustles the newspaper, then it's worth pursuing a more exciting life, rather than giving up and running away with somebody else, only to realise they steal the duvet too. I'm not sure, but I think the author may be having marital problems. Tip 32. Men love to be surprised, so if the mood takes you, grab him when he's got nothing more sexual on his mind than cooking pasta. Undo his trousers and give him a blowjob. However, do not do this: A, if you're beside an uncurtained window, B, if he's holding a pan of boiling water and it will land on your head for sure, or C, if he's in a meeting at work. Other than that, go ahead girlfriend. We'll also add D, public playground, to that list too. The first part of this chapter is spontaneity. Spontaneity is the main thing everyone screams about, but to have spontaneity you also need a little bit of planning. It's all good wanting to surprise your boo with a spontaneous massage, but read the room first. If he's watching the footy, it probably won't happen, but offering him an oral happy ending while he's watching and he'll probably do the washing up for the week. Best summed up with this statement from the book: small, unexpected gestures are perfect, but enormous, complicated, unexpected ones are not quite so good. If spontaneity isn't for you, the next section might be. Planning one night a month with each other is really good. This way you're focused on what else you might do in bed. Like, it will still be a surprise, but you've got the plan of squish on a particular day of a month. But, as the next part of the chapter would also suggest, this can then become mundane. So mix it up with a different location once in a while. Move the furniture around. Do it in the kitchen. Have a night away at the hotel. Change the sheets. Whatever you can think of. The slightest changes can have a major effect on your routine, because we appear to be programmed to respond to change by instigating more change. Tip 33. Send him a series of sexy text messages throughout the day to keep him all worked up. Obviously, it helps if he knows they're from you. Otherwise, he might not mention them and then you'll think he's having an affair. God, that's way too confusing. But assuming he does know, just send him a few straight to the point little thoughts like, want to f*** or you make me horny. Or, for the shyer lady, a simple, can't wait to see you. If he comes home and says, what were all those nonsense text messages about, assume he just doesn't understand text language, and show him what you meant instead. Though if you were to text like that nowadays, they'll probably think you've had a stroke. Do people still send messages like this? You can also try adding clothing. Who doesn't like the idea of dressing up and getting prettified? This could be as simple as a new bra and panty set to a full Zentai outfit. My words, not the book's. The choice is yours. I love this line here talking about bra and panty sets. But rest assured, 9 men out of 10 prefer skimpy black lacy stuff given the choice, and the 10th is just temporarily lost in some virgin deflowering fantasy. But you don't need to spend mountains of money on tiny pieces of cloth that only you and your partner will see. But making sure you are both feeling sexy is the key to getting more squish. Also, more men shaming in this part too. Honestly hadn't realised how much there was in this book. I wonder if any of my other naughty books do this too. Would certainly explain a few things about society. But yeah, hygiene is a must for both, not just for him. Now that we've talked about getting dressed up, let's take it off. Next up is stripping, even if you're a feminist. I didn't say it, it's what the book says. Now forget you're a feminist for a moment and consider making your partner dizzy with gratitude. Now, let's be clear, wrenching off clothing isn't stripping. The only time you want to be wrenching clothes off is when it's each other's. Doing a sexy dance while slowly taking them off, on the other hand, is. Next up within this chapter is danger. No, not recreating a drive-by kind of danger, but getting a little frisky with the added risk kind. It's proven that danger and squish go hand in hand. The closer to danger you are, the more aroused you get afterwards. Hey, the book says it, not me. Scientific studies have proven that the closer you come to danger, the more aroused you are directly afterwards. Ah, so this is why all them teen slasher movies have rampant horny high schoolers. Makes sense. Canoeing in rapids may be fantastic, but not practical for a midweek squish session down in Devon, so risky places to have squish is a great way to spice up your life. I love this quote here from the book in regards to risky not the kind you have with a Brazilian transvestite named Venus and share a syringe full of the kind where you can get caught. How did they find out about my trip to Brazil? The book offers some places that you could try out, like the back of the car, deserted car parks, beaches, the best friend's bathroom, nightclub toilets, and all them cool places. Word of warning though on having squish in someone else's bathroom, make sure they are a good friend and that you clean up after too. That's just basic manners. Also be aware that depending on the severity of it and how you get caught, you may end up getting charged, so just be careful. This isn't me telling you to do anything. If you decide to have squish with your boo in a Tesco car park and get caught, that is completely on you. I've made plenty of my own bad decisions. I don't need your bad decisions too. With all that under your belt, it's now time for being sexy. In this section, it goes over more tips on how to be sexy, like go commando in a short skirt. Christ, the feminines really will come for me after this one, won't they? Or, if you're northern, just do a swap and wear your panties and a pair of fishnets for your next night out and you're golden. Do it next to a mirror. Mirrors are very sexy too, especially if you feel a little too self-conscious and exposed for the first tip there. And this part just makes me laugh every time I read it. When else do you get to see their ass thrusting at you? Oh, of course, the video you made last New Year. But apart from that, how do they keep finding my blue tape? It's as if I keep them on the coffee table. Apparently food is sexy, and other than innuendos about bananas and eating off your girlfriend's ass, food and squish in my opinion does not go together. But I know people do like this, and I should cover the whole book, so there are some ideal foods to use for sexy time, like pineapple rings, banana slices, sliced grapes, strawberries, and ice cream. But the book does advise not eating stews off each other unless you can do it convincingly and without burnage. Wise words to live by, really. And no peanut butter, that's just weird. We know who you're trying to convince to lick you with that one. That's a me tip, not the book's. Next up we have Quickie Squish. This section goes over the concept of Quickie Squish and how having quick squish is perfectly fine, as long as you both get what you want. It doesn't matter if it's a quickie before the kids wake up or a long weekend fully clothed banquet of passion. A happy ending is a happy ending. Don't really think I need to explain that one any further now, do I? Next it's noises, and more evidence that Flic was having marital issues while writing this book. Long-term squish does partially rely on remembering to demonstrate that you still like each other. I am largely joking with these jibes, but while doing research for this video, I did discover that she did indeed have marital problems and subsequently divorced her spouse. So, anyway. Now obviously you don't want to make so much noise that the neighbours will complain, or even worse, call the police, but don't just lay there like a tranquilised mattress and whimper the most pathetic ada. The more you show you're into it, the more you'll get into it yourself, and bish bash bosh, you're having a cigarette while he's cleaning his todger on the curtains. The last section is talking about photos of yourself and each other. Oh boy, this is going to be an interesting one to explain. Can you hear the pearl clutches? I certainly can. This part of the chapter is great, and I think it's perfectly fine to do, but I will say don't share them with people who don't understand the word consent or confidentiality. Though in this day and age, I honestly don't know how young adults are meant to trust anyone. With the constant threat of being exposed or cancelled, I honestly feel sad for them. But if you are wanting to take naughty photos of your boo, there are two main things you should have. Trust is a must, must, and so is consent. If you are over the age of consent and you consent to taking pictures, then you consented to taking pictures. End of discussion. Next chapter. Oh dear lord, I think I'm leaving this one for the Patreons, I'm afraid. There is far too much here that will get me a YouTube strike, I know it. The YouTube-friendly TLDR, Ann Summers is great, according to the book. Again, not Spawn. Now that would be a great sponsor. Anyway, Ann Summers is a thing, and there are many toys for you and him. I'm working on an A to Z list all about sex toys, so if you subscribe and all that jazz, you'll be notified when it comes out. Also in this chapter are a few more games you can play together. We've got strip poker, pretty obvious, and if you can't play poker, Cards Against Humanity would work a treat also. Or Snap, or Noughts and Crosses. Honestly, any game can be upgraded to a strip game, you just gotta be creative with it. Blind Man Bluff. Hide a piece of fruit on you and blindfold your boo and get them to find the fruit. Prawn charades. Act out squish positions so the other can guess them and then do that position. Though, word of warning, this isn't one for family gatherings, as the book says. Prawn snap. Hire some prawn and reenact what the prawns do. I do find it funny how one word can date your book instantly, and with this book it's the word hire. Back in my day, you went to the local Blockbusters and went behind the curtain door to get your dirty movies. Or you can do what I used to do and just go on a long weekend to Amsterdam and find lots of interesting movies. Next up in the chapter is fantasy and roleplay. Something I think more people need to learn about, because having a fantasy is perfectly fine. It can be the most depraved thing you can think of, but as long as it isn't quote-unquote lived out or done in real life, it's fine. Enacting is a completely different thing compared to lived out. Take for example the naughty schoolgirl and the haughty headmaster roleplay and or fantasy. It's a great fantasy to enact with your consenting other half, especially if they have the power dynamic kink. Yes, that is a thing. But if you were to live out the fantasy and say date a 14-year-old, then you'd be in hot water now, wouldn't you? The book then goes into detail about dress up and props and all them nice things that I'm probably going to be doing a video on at some point also, so I won't talk too much about them here. And lastly in this chapter is erotica. Can I say that on YouTube? I think I can. I mean, I'm a good 20 minutes into the video, so I think censoring it is okay for now. But yes, this can be in the form of books, magazines, films, audiobooks, and all that jazz. I love erotica, and I love writing it also. I'm actually thinking of having some of it up on the Patreon as some exclusive content for you all. If that's something you'd like to read, head over to the Patreon, link is in the description. Chapter 6, and we are now onto the adventurous squish squish, my favourite. I love this line here. We're not talking about dodgy, risky, picking up strangers' sex. You go right ahead if you want to do that, but I refuse to take the blame when it turns out he's an escaped convict, or mad, or emotionally stunted. I know this book is from the early 2000s, and some parts are outdated and slightly insensitive, but I honestly believe this part still holds up today. You can't blame anyone else but yourself if you pick a wrong 'un. Bum bum squish squish. Every man's fantasy, though as the book says, girls may find pooing a big carrot more fun. Clearly the author has never used a fancy butt plug, have they? Though I could believe it's also because her partner's just shoved it up there and not considered any of the training that's involved. Anyway, this part of the chapter goes over the training methods you should use and how to prepare yourself for bum bum squish squish. Do not just shove it in there, that's not good at all. That's how you get a kick in the face. And yes, that is a personal experience. I also love the beginning part of the tip in this section. Tip 61. If you feel compelled to rim, remember that thing where you lick each other's bottoms like little doggies? The only thing that's really important is to be clean, because the bot is a breeding ground for odd bacteria, which is fine when bottom bound, but not so good in your mouth. It's also a good idea to keep a pack of wet wipes by the bed, so you can just whisk over your bits, should the urge to lick where the sun doesn't shine overtake you. And if you can overcome your natural inhibitions, it can feel fantastic, so it's definitely worth the price of a wipe. That's certainly one way to describe the act. The tip itself is actually really good advice too. Next up we have sadomasochism, or S&M, the famous song by Rihanna. This is the section that I read and reread as a teenager. There's a rather large section of advice in here that I won't talk about here, but is certainly a topic I could talk for an hour alone. If the video wasn't as long as it is right now, I'd happily talk your ears off about it, but seeing as this video is getting a bit long, I shall leave it for another video. Though I will give you the tips from this part of the chapter. Tip 65. If dressing up in tight rubber appeals, it pays to know that getting into it is like struggling into a full-body condom. That is difficult, painful, and not remotely erotic. But a way of making it easier to slide on without catching yourself painfully is with liberal applications of talc, which smooths over all your lumps and bumps beautifully. Getting out of it, however, is a different matter, and unless you want to crush his mystery woman fantasy totally, you might want to do this in private. Tip 66. When you're tying each other up, it's useful to use restraints you can actually undo afterwards, which is why anything with nylon in it is a really bad idea, and silk and cotton are fine. Using discarded stockings then, while dirtily attractive notion, is a disaster in reality, because the lycra tightens to a flesh-choking grip and the knots are impossible to unpick. The best bet is silk scarves. Tip 67. If you want to try bondage but handcuffs seem a bit hardcore, you can buy bondage tape from sex shops. Like gaffer tape, but not nearly as hard to unpeel. It simply wraps around your ankles or your wrists without causing pain, and can be pulled off or snipped off when you're finished. You can use it as a gag theoretically, but gagging can be a dangerous move. So go easy and don't wrap it around each other's heads 6 times or anything. Tip 68. You can get leather dog collars and leads to drag your sex slave around behind you and wear them to a private club. No, not your local conservative association, you fool. Or simply play master and servant at home. If you do though, be extra vigilant about how much force you're using. Power games can tap into all sorts of buried emotions, and you don't want to be getting off in a fantasy only to turn round and find that he's sobbing because of his unresolved issues. So go easy. Water sports. No, not the kind that you do on holiday in Ibiza. This is where you share your warm lemonade. That's a clear innuendo, right? Or a yellow one, I suppose. Some people really enjoy doing this sort of thing, and if you're going to try it, drink plenty of water beforehand so the pee is not too strong. Urine is acidic, and if it's on the strong side, it could lead to irritation of the skin. Be careful of accidental ingestion too. Stay clear from the face. That's just nasty. And be careful of what you eat also, as it will change the smell of your pee too. Also, no peeing on the carpet, it will never recover. Group squish squish is up next, or how I learned about key parties. Anyway, this chapter is the act of more than 2 people engaging in consensual squish squish. I do like that the author has talked about the other side of this, which is jealousy, or as the book calls it, emotional nuclear meltdown. You may think you're mature enough to handle it, but once it's all over and you're left wondering if your partner wants to be with you or the other person, and you then go on to convince people that you were manipulated into it instead. That's just a hypothetical, not personal experience. It does also go over what to do if you are emotionally mature enough to go through with it, and I had to chuckle at this hypothetical scenario from the book. Brian and Sheila? Ted and Angela. Lovely. Now, do have some peanuts and a sherry, then we can get our clothes off and go have a fuck. I mean, yeah, I can imagine it being an awkward situation, especially if it's the first time you've met, though I may suggest a rum rather than a sherry. Unless you're 90 years old, then you enjoy your sherry. Anyway, on to the next part of the chapter, exhibitionism. As the book says, it's just sexual showing off. That's anything from being an OnlyFans girl all the way up to dogging. This was talked about briefly in Risky Squish Squish earlier, so I won't repeat myself here. And the last part of this chapter, and another chapter that I read a lot, is, can I say fetishism? I'll censor it just in case. Again, this is a topic I could talk about for hours. In fact, I'm working on a video about this very topic, so subscribe and all that jazz. But the YouTube-friendly TLDR is this is all about the kinks and fetishes that are mainstream and well known, like high heel and foot fetishes, rubber and latex, and of course, BDSM. We're coming to the end of the book now and only have 2 more chapters left. Woot! You've got Advanced Squish Squish and Spiritual Squish Squish. The last chapter isn't very long, so I'm just kind of tacking it on to the end of this chapter. Shh. So, you've learned all the positions, you've read up on all the fetishes, and you've drank all the water. What's next? You put it all together, obviously. First up is advanced smooching, which includes nibbling the lip, butterfly kisses, and what the book calls a soul kiss, which just sounds like something a dementor would perform on you. You basically French kiss while breathing into each other's mouths. I think I'll stick to the dementor's kiss, thanks. Next we have advanced, 3+1 play,
Quick maths,
which goes over different methods of touching each other's bodies. We've got biting, stroking, sucking, licking, pinching, and rubbing. Oh my! The book suggests body mapping, which is where you spend time touching your boo in different ways to discover where and how they like to be touched. The blindfold makes this game even better. Next up we have advanced happy endings. This is where you learn that there are, in fact, different types of happy endings. Men have up to 7 different ways and women have up to 10. What? You want to know the different ways for both sexes? Most certainly. For men, it's squish squish, manual, oral, prostrate, fantasy and dreams, touching bosoms, and toys. We women have, and stimulation. That one still makes my vajayjay cringe. G-spot, urethra, bosoms, mouth, anal, blended in infusion, erogenous zone, and fantasy. This part also talks about the different erogenous zones and how to stimulate them, as well as the elusive female ejaculation. But that's a little too risque for YouTube, so I shall leave it there. Advanced oral squish squish. This is fine for YouTube, right? Right? We've got the 69 position, which honestly only works when you're both the same height, though there's no harm in trying. Well, I mean, you may fall off and stuff like that, but squish squish isn't meant to be perfect. Advanced BJs is all about how to give the best BJs. Now, ladies, come closer to the monitor and listen real good now. I know the idea of putting it in your mouth disgusts you, and generally you only do it once a year on his birthday, but you want him to do that laundry, yeah? Give him a surprise BJ after his shower, and he'll do whatever you want to do, within reason. Cunnilingus, kissing the cat, going down, and all them cool phrases, is teaching you men how to please your boos. Now men, listen carefully. Learn where the bean is and give it a good tongue lashing for around 20 minutes and your boo will probably stop nagging you so much, I promise. Though you best go do that laundry quick too. The tip on this topic is also really good advice, men. Tip 89. Men can actually strengthen their tongues in the same way they can practice to strengthen their PC muscles. A particularly useful exercise is to get his tongue used to moving in a different way from its usual pattern of tasting chips and beers and talking, is for him to lick out a yogurt pot, or creme fraiche if he's posh. The necessity of extracting every last drop will mean that he has to extend his tongue like a python and rotate gently, which is excellent practice when he comes to do the same for your own yogurt pot. And of course the hovering butterfly. Or if you're a northerner, sit on my face. Which, I'll be totally honest with you all, I hadn't realised it was a big thing for some men. Maybe it was the type of men I was entertaining back then, who knows. Just make sure you don't suffocate your partner. That's not a police interview you want to be having. There are other things covered in this chapter, like how to delay happy endings to allow the pleasure to last longer, and advanced toys, but I think I'll move on to the last chapter before YouTube comes after me. Spiritual squish squish. Now, it's not the hippy dippy shit you're thinking of where you dance naked in the woods together. That's a different kind of spiritual awakening. Though like the book says, it's not the kind of squish squish you have with a one night stand and or your sexting partner. The idea of spiritual squish squish is to connect with your partner on a deeper level. This is most commonly known as tantric squish squish, and again deserves its own video to do it any justice. It also talks about the mysterious multiple happy ending for men. Now I will explain that it's not the same multiple happy ending that a woman can have, but the effect is just as spectacular. And that's the end of the book. Now going off this book, you can start to get an idea of what the TV show was like. Honestly, I wish I could find a streaming service that actually had the series. One can dream, though I have a feeling it may be gone to the land of lost media. Like I've said many a time throughout this video, I love this little book and it was a great way to get into the world of naughty stuff. Was I a little too young to be reading it? No, I was curious and wanted to learn. I was 15 turning 16 in a part of the country where the average age of girls popping the cherry cola was 14. I've said it many times now, us British girls are just built different, I'm afraid to say. Anyway, that is the end of the episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, all that chores. And if you're wanting to watch the uncensored version of the episode, head over to the Patreon. There you will find an assortment of exclusives and uncensored videos and all that jazz. Honestly, not to brag, but my Patreon is pretty lit. You should definitely come check it out. Anyway, enough of the shilling. I shall see you all in the next one. Bye!